Good evening, everyone. I had a little bit of time, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about something going on that I think a lot of people don't know much about, or they like to think they know a lot about. But anyway, it's February the 18th, 2026. I want to talk a little bit about immigration and this ICE and some of the things that, we all know what's been going on. I mean, you see it on Facebook, you see it on all the social media, YouTube, everything. Everyone's been talking about it, unless something kind of overshadows it, like Epstein or something like that. But it's funny when someone says something, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, somebody says something, then everybody just jumps on that bandwagon all of a sudden, and they just believe what they're saying. And these guys aren't attorneys. They don't know. They don't work in immigration. They don't know what's happening. And there's one thing that bothers me a lot, and that's when people say, hey, do things legally, come here legally. Well, immigration's been broken forever, and there's like a few legal paths to some sort of citizenship, but of course Donald Trump's put all them on pause. But even before he put them on pause, and they were paused, there was no easy way to get any sort of citizenship in the United States. And we have treaties with other places, and then we just have the standing deal of, if you come from a place, and you're being persecuted for a certain group of reasons, whether it's, because of your gender, or because of your, how you identify, or because of, your sexual preference, or because of politics, or because you're a part of some group, or you're being targeted in some way, by that government through some sort of political persecution or something, that, you have the ability, and it's something that we did a long time ago, to come and ask for asylum and plead your case for protections under the asylum laws of the United States. Now, a lot of people, and it's something else to get into. We can do a whole nother episode about it. But, for anything that you say, like, hey, those people are here on asylum, well, why didn't they go to the first country they came to? And that's what they'll say. Okay. Well, I'll talk a little bit about that. I won't go into depth about it. If you want me to go in depth about it, I guess I can do another episode about it. But I'll go a little bit below the surface, and that is, if you were working for the opposition party in Venezuela, then you will be targeted by Nicolas Maduro. Probably not anymore, because he's sitting in jail in New York, but I'm just saying prior to now. But even now, like the vice president, the security minister, people like that are pro-Maduro, they are Chavistas, they were all about Chavez and this Bolivarian revolution. They would target you if you were working for the opposition party, out rallying like we do in the United States, going door to door, handing out flyers, or trying to get people to vote for someone besides Nicolas Maduro, okay? And you would be targeted. And the thing is, they have people everywhere. So let's say that I fled, like Juan Guaido fled after he was elected. They said, oh, he's the real president, whatever. And he tried to get into the palace and take over the presidency, and they ran him out and threatened his life. Well, he fled to Colombia, but then he couldn't even really stay there, because they have operatives in Colombia. And if he went north and went to Panama, same difference. They got people there. They got people in El Salvador. They got people in Nicaragua. They got people in Guatemala. They got people in Mexico. They can pay those cartel members to get to someone, So you're not really safe unless you flee all of that part of the country in Central and South America, and you come up to North America. Well, the first safe place you're going to be able to come to is probably the United States. You're going to have a little better protection here, or you used to, before we had this new ICE Gestapo police thing that we got going on now. We're like a police state. but you could come here and ask for asylum. And under the law, if you read the asylum law, you have to apply for asylum from within the United States. So in order to do that, you have to be on U.S. soil to do that. So people would cross the fence, cross the border, whatever, and they would seek out a border patrol agent or, an immigration agent. And they would turn themselves into that agent in order to ask for asylum and present their case. And the agents would ask them a series of questions: where they're from, what's going on, and they would determine whether they had what they call credible fear or not. If they had credible fear, then they would turn them over to a place to process them and find out if they had family members here, if they had, some place they could go where they could feel safe and be taken care of. And once they were granted that, they were given what they call humanitarian parole, or parole of some sort, depending on, where they were from and what they were fleeing. And just like in Afghanistan, some of the people that helped our soldiers there were given, asylum protection. Just like Ukraine, they let a lot of women and children leave that war-torn area and come to the United States under parole. And, people from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Haiti, they had started a program for them, and it was a humanitarian parole. They had to have a U.S. sponsor that would say they would take care of them. They wouldn't become a charge to the state, where they were, having to get on all kinds of welfare and things like this, and get housing and medical and things from the United States, and have to live off taxpayer dollars, as long as they had a sponsor. And the sponsor was vetted. He wasn't a trafficker. He wasn't a criminal or something, and he had resources to help that person. That person could sponsor them, and then once they were approved, the immigrant had to give their fingerprints, go through, this pattern of figuring out who they were, if they had a criminal record and all these things. And if they passed that vetting, then they were given permission to come to a port of entry at an airport, fly into the United States from whatever country they were in, and they were granted 2 years to be able to live here, work here, and stay here, to see if things changed from where they were from, the war-torn areas, or, to get them out of that humanitarian crisis they were living in. And so, when I've actually sponsored people to come here, and they had to vet me, and they had to make sure I had the income, and they had to do all that. And so that person, when they came here, they had to come to a port of entry, turn themselves into immigration there at the airport. They had to fly to one of the airports that actually had immigration services. Like, there's several of them, like in Florida, they've got one, New York City, whatever, but you had to fly and get, arrange your own flight. You had to pay for your own tickets, or your sponsor had to, and you fly in, and then immigration vets them again. Even after they've been vetted, made sure they had their vaccines, all of their shots, they didn't have any communicable diseases. They went to the doctor and got checked out, and they'd been vetted, make sure they wasn't a criminal. They came and they vetted them again. Then they run them through the system. They ask them a series of questions and did all this. And if they determined that they were going to allow them to enter, then they would stamp their passport with 2 years from the date of entry and allow them to be here. And then they were, at the expense of their sponsor or themselves, were able to fly on to where their sponsor was at and stay there. And then after like, I think it was 30 days, might have been 60 days, 90 days, they were able to apply and get a work permit, be issued a 2-year Social Security card. They're able to go take their driver's license test so that they can get a driver's license. But on their driver's license, it'll literally just say it's only good for the period of time that their passport's stamped for. But just because they do not have documents saying that they're a citizen, naturalized, or that they have a status in the United States, they are here legally. They're here legally. They did the legal procedure to be here. And during the Biden administration, whether you want to agree with it or not, at that point he was the president, and he could use the pen, just like Donald Trump's done, and sign executive orders, and he was trying to stem the flow of people coming across the border. And so he started a program through an app, and it was called the CBP1 app. Now, there's been a lot of people that doesn't know about it. Maybe they know how it works, but they've spread a lot of misinformation about it. But it actually was a very, very good program. It's one of the best things that I have seen immigration do in 50 years. And what they did was a person went onto the app, they downloaded the app, the immigration from USCIS, United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They would download the app from the website. They put their name, they put their age, they put their date of birth, they put copies of their birth certificates, they listed all the information about where they were born, where they've lived, all the countries they've lived. They submitted facial recognition pictures on there, and then they also had to go and be fingerprinted, and that was all put into the app. And they asked for permission to have an appointment to have their asylum case heard, or for permission to be granted asylum. And they put all that information into the CBP1 app, and then immigration would process those, and they had to stay in the country where they were from or in another country. They could not enter the United States until they were invited to come. And after their number came up and they got an appointment, they would be given a day when they could cross at a port of entry, a regular port of entry, across the bridge out of Mexico into the southern part of the United States, and turn themselves over to immigration for their appointment. And they would cross the bridge on the date they were invited through the app to come talk to immigration, and they would ask them all the questions, take their fingerprints, DNA, whatever it was that they needed to do there, and they would hear their case, and they could speak to an asylum officer. And if the asylum officer decided that they had credible fear, or that they thought that they had a decent case, then they would allow them to come in, and they would issue them documentation to be in the United States under parole, which is just a temporary status while they're going through immigration court, so that a judge, they can get due process and a judge can hear their case. Now, did some bad people come through on that? Yes, I'm sure they did. Anytime there's any sort of help, any sort of funding, COVID funding, any kind of anything, food stamps, welfare, Social Security, anything where someone is offering up something to someone, there's always going to be a certain someone in any group of those programs that are going to try to fraud those programs, and it's just a fact. And there's not much you can do about it except for just try to weed out the fraud and go through the whole process and figure out if somebody is frauding the system, and if they do, they should face punishment for that, because it's not right that they do that and that the other people, have to pay for something that a few bad people did. So is there a few bad people that came under that? I'm sure there is. But they knew who they were. They had their fingerprints. They had everything that they needed. They kind of knew where they were going. Some of them, if they thought they were a little iffy, they would make them wear electronic monitoring devices. Some of them, they made them have a cell phone or download the information on their cell phone, like a tracking type app, kind of like Life 360, so they always knew where that person was and they could go find them if they needed. So, is there some people that cut the monitors off and throw the phone away or did something? I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens, and if they did, well, then they'll catch up with them and they'll throw them out of the country, and they'll never be able to come back again. So, that's the way it is. That's just law, and, some people are going to break the law. Now, to sit and say that everyone that ever came here were murderers, rapists, killers, pedophiles, things like this is a bullshit lie. It's like the Wizard of Oz. They're trying to scare people. It's like lions and tigers and bears, oh my, And if we can convince 80 million people that all these people are just disgusting, filthy people from shithole countries, and they're no good, and they're taking your jobs, and they're taking all the homes, and they're making your life miserable, and you're having to pay for them, and they're criminals and killers and rapists, and we can get enough people scared of their own shadow, then you've changed the narrative there a little bit, haven't you? And people will run down there and put a little check mark by your name because you're going to fix it and make it safer. But if you look at before Donald Trump was president and after he was president, and you look at the crime statistics of migrants before and during and after, and nothing changed. And if you really look at your own life, did you feel more safe, less safe, or anything before you knew this, after you knew it, and even now that we're getting all these bad, worst of the worst out, which is not true. They're getting everybody out. And then they started this false narrative about all these people came to our country illegally. Well, yes, there was a few people that snuck into the country undetected. And that happens all the time. And even though he would like to say that he's got the border shut down and no one's crossing, that's a bullshit narrative too, because people are still sneaking in undetected. And if they're sneaking in undetected, then how do you count someone that's undetected? Unless you caught them on a camera or something sneaking in and you didn't catch them, and you knew they were gotaways. And there probably was a lot of gotaways. There's always been gotaways. People that sneak under the ground, sneak over the fence, come through the worst part of the fucking desert to get here, because those are the bad people that don't want to be fucking found coming into the country. And that's just fucking facts. But the people that come under the CBP1 app, or that came under humanitarian parole with a sponsor, or the people that crossed the border and turned themselves into border agents and said, hey, I want asylum, and they said the right things, maybe they were coached or whatever, because they wanted to come to the United States and work, send money back home to their families and help people out, because it's kind of shitty where they're at, and there's not many jobs, and they don't make money, and all this. So, I mean, everybody had their own reason for coming. But those people that turned themselves in were probably most likely not criminals. If they were, if they would have been terrorists or on a terror watch list, or they had been previously kicked out of the country and told they can't come back, or they had been removed from the country before, and they'd got a final removal order and been removed, and they can't try to come back for 5 years. Those are the ones that if they were trying to come back, they wouldn't turn themselves into border agents or get on a CBP1 app or ask for a U.S. sponsor, because they would know that they were going to get turned down because they were banned from the country for a period of time or indefinitely. So, you know, all this shit was a bullshit false narrative, but they have convinced people that everyone that come here, they did it illegally, and then Biden just opened the borders and people walked across and decided where they wanted to live, and they went and lived there. And that's not the way that it all went down. There's a lot of people that are going through a process, and if they're going through a process and they were granted parole, whether it be humanitarian, for asylum, or they're under some deal, even a K-1 visa or a marriage visa or a student visa or some sort of, you know, they were on they do a lottery, and they pick like 1 million people a year that can come into the country from different countries, and so many in this country and so many in that country. And if you win that visa lottery, you're allowed to come. And they do the same thing. They vet you, make sure you're not a criminal, blah, blah, blah. And you're allowed to come here. Are you a citizen? No. Do you have citizenship? No. Do you have documentation saying that you're a citizen? No. But you do have documentation that you're under a program. So you are not a citizen. You're not a permanent resident. So you have less right to be here than someone that is actually been through all the whole process and granted some sort of permanent residency, or have earned your citizenship through marriage or through some kind of a thing, you know, student, and you applied and eventually went through the long process, or a family member applied for you to come here, like your brother or your mom or your dad or something. So you don't have as much status as they have, but you are not here illegally. you're still granted, you still have paperwork saying you were granted permission to be here. So it pisses me off when people say, hey, do things the right way. Well, they are doing things the right way. There's a lot of right ways. But under this administration, unless you're married to Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or one of these rich elite people, you don't have status. You're illegal being here, which is bullshit. That's not true. There's a lot of people that have a lot of different reasons why they're here, and they're using a lot of diverse different programs to be here, and they have documentation saying they're allowed to be here. They just don't have proof of citizenship because they're not a citizen. They're not a permanent resident. They don't have any permanent status yet. So are they undocumented? No, they're not undocumented because they have documentation that say they can be here, but they're considered to be undocumented because they don't have a birth certificate from here, or they don't have their permanent residency card, or they don't have, their naturalized citizenship paperwork that says they're a naturalized citizen now. They've went through the whole process, took the oath, and did all that. But there's many paths to being able to be a permanent resident, a naturalized citizen, or to become, some sort of citizen here and have an actual true status, a long-term, indefinite status, as long as you don't commit a crime or do something where your status is revoked. So, and that's the problem here, is everyone thinks that when they see someone else from somewhere else and they were not born here, then they're here illegally. That's the thing that's floating around in everyone's minds, and they're going, oh, you should have done it the right way. Okay, well, which way's the right way? Because there's dozens and dozens of different ways, and just because I didn't put my name on a list and fill out paperwork and wait 25 years to go through a whole process and go take an oath and all that, doesn't mean that I'm not doing something the right way or the legal way, because there's a lot of legal ways. And the CBP One app inviting you to cross the border is one legal way. Asking for asylum and being granted parole to be here while you're going through court means that you are here legally. You have paperwork saying that you are allowed to be here. Now, if you break the law, they can pull that. They can revoke that. And at any time, you can go to court and the judge can go, case dismissed, you're out of here. You don't have a credible case, or your case can be denied. And then even when your case is denied, you can appeal it, and they will still give you documentation to stay here while you're going through that due process, that appeals process, to see if there's something you can do to override what the judge's decision was. So, it irks the shit out of me, and it pisses me off when you have people that are not immigration attorneys. They never studied any sort of law, much less immigration law, and they're running around spitting their rhetoric on social media about all these illegals, these illegals, these illegals. Well, how the fuck do you know what somebody's status are? Just like one day my back was in bad shape. I was walking with the cane and all this, but I kind of got to where I could walk good, but I still had trouble. And they had given me a temporary handicap sticker for my car. And so I would park in the handicap, and this guy get out of my car, and the guy goes, well, you don't look very fucking handicapped to me. Just because I wasn't in a wheelchair or walking with my cane that day, I was feeling a little bit better, but I was still in a lot of pain. And I knew by the time I got through the Walmart and got back out there, I wanted to be parking close because I was going to start having nerve problems and twitching nerves, and I was going to be hurting and shit a lot of times, and I wanted to be parked pretty close. I would definitely not want to take someone's place. If someone was wheelchair bound or something, and they needed that spot, I would definitely give it up. But there were plenty of spots, so I was parked in one. And the guy's giving me a hard time going, you don't look like you're fucking handicapped to me. And it's like I told him, I said, well, I don't see fucking a stethoscope hanging around your neck, and I don't see a fucking white coat and a fucking tag that says MD. Would you like to run your finger up my ass, doc, and tell me what's fucking wrong with me? Since you're such a fucking medical expert, because you don't know me from fucking Adam. You don't know my situation. So why would you just fucking assume because you see me step out of the car and I'm walking up here and I don't have a fucking wheelchair or cane, that I don't have some sort of fucking issue? What if I had heart problems and I can't breathe well, so I park close because I can get out of fucking breath on my walk to the fucking store? You don't know because you're not a fucking doctor, Mr. No MD motherfucker, so mind your business. So to me, it's the same thing. You cannot look at someone and go, you're fucking illegal, you shouldn't fucking be here. Go back to where you fucking came from. You don't know their fucking situation. You're not their immigration attorney. You're not the fucking judge. You're not USCIS. You didn't do a fucking 6-month investigation to find out if they were fucking here illegally or not. And you know, most of these motherfuckers don't know the fucking laws about immigration. They don't even know how to fucking obey the fucking laws of the land that are on the fucking books that are wrote in plain English, and they've lived under them their whole fucking life. They don't understand them. They get their law degree from Law and Order on fucking Wednesday nights on TV or something. You know, so it's like, that pisses me off on every fucking level. And it makes you more mad when you're walking through the fucking Walmart and somebody says to your old lady, girlfriend or whatever, motherfuckers, why don't you go back where you come from? I want to push their nose through the back of their fucking skull, because you don't know where that person's from. And there's a lot of people that were born and fucking raised here, but they look brown, or they look black, or they look Asian. But you're going to fucking assume, you two-teeth trailer park trash motherfucker, that you seem to think you know about them. Because it's all about racism is what the fuck it really is about. It's not about whether somebody's here legally or not. It's not about the worst of the worst and getting them out of the country. It has nothing to do with people taking jobs or frauding the fucking government or getting benefits that they're not supposed to get. It has to do with the fucking color of their skin. And that's what this administration is made it about. And most of the people that still follow them after a year of this draconian fucking bullshit that's been going on, that's what, you know, the ones that still follow them think that way. And when you get on there and you see somebody being deported, you know, and you're like, man, that's too bad. I wonder what the guy's story was. You know, I wonder if he done something wrong, or maybe he just was being fucking harassed by these fucking Nazi fucking Gestapo thug bastards that are overpaid and under fucking trained to go out and just perform fucking racist duties for a fucking pedophile piece of shit every day. You know, and that's just kind of where I stand on the deal. And so it's like, and then they come out with their fucking comments, you know, well, good, this is what I fucking voted for. Really, dude? Really? Well, maybe there's a fucking place for you where they ought to put you, because we don't want fucking people like you around us or in our fucking country. Maybe it shouldn't be about whether you're documented or not. Maybe it should really truly be about whether you're a fucking good citizen or not, whether you're a nice person or not, whether you're a helpful person or not. And I guess people are entitled to be fucking racist if they want. I guess people are entitled to their opinions. But it sure pisses me the fuck off, and I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. So, you know, there's some sick satanic garbage in the world, and that's what it is. You know, I'm looking at a picture of a little 5-year-old boy that his dad just got beat the fuck down, and he's sitting there watching all this shit, and then they grab him up, and then they go lock him up, and they won't give him his medicine, and they won't do this, and they're living in this fucking detention center being treated like a piece of fucking trash. They're not even being treated like humans. They're being treated like garbage. And people like that shit, and they comment on it and think it's fucking great. Well, that's a sick fucking person that feels that way. And shit like that pisses me off. It gets on my last nerve, you know. So that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today before I started getting fucking mad, because it's something I'm passionate about, and it pisses me the fuck off when people treat people like that. And, you know, when they don't know nothing about what somebody's doing or what their status is or whatever. When a guy that I worked with, I was a foreman at a company, when he's going down the street, and some guys drive by with their Donald Trump flag in the back fucking window with their big giant American flag, and they might as well be flying a fucking Nazi flag, because they drive by and they're telling my buddy, my worker that works for me, And he was born in fucking Arkansas and raised in fucking Arkansas. He's been here his whole life. He's been to Mexico a couple times to see some distant family, but otherwise he went to school here. If you hear him talk, he sounds just like me. He doesn't even have an accent. But because he looks the way he is and we're out working and motherfuckers drive by and go, well, motherfucker, won't you go back where you come from? And he's like, I am. I'm like, where I come from. I'm in Springdale, Arkansas, bro. You know? This is where I was born and raised. This is where I went to school my whole life. It's what I know. I know more about this place than you probably do. You probably ain't even from here. You know? And it's some fucking bullshit. I don't like it. It pisses me off. So, you know. But the truth is there's a lot of people here, and they're here for a reason. They're here for a purpose. You know? And no one else knows their purpose because we're not their immigration attorney. We don't know how they come here. We don't know if they stuck under the border, under the fence, come in up there in El Paso through a tunnel, come across the desert in the hot sun, or was hauled 150 in a semi-truck. We don't know that. We don't know nothing about this person. But we're going to assume because they speak with an accent, or they don't speak good English, or they don't speak English, or they look a certain way, that they're undocumented, they're illegal here. And that's bullshit, you know. And at this point, from what I've seen, it doesn't matter whether they're here legally, illegally, or what. They could have been born and raised here, and these fucking idiots will still break their fucking window out, beat them down, and go detain them and figure it out later. That's not how we do business in America. That's not how we've ever really tried to do things in America. It's bullshit and it needs to stop. And I don't know that you can reform this shit with the people that they've hired lately, these redneck brown shirt fucking Nazi Gestapo morons, you know, white supremacist piece of shit motherfuckers that probably they were probably January 6ers or some bullshit, you know. I don't know that you can reform them. I think they'll just abolish them. Hell, they were started in 2003. It ain't like it's a lifelong agency, you know. It ain't like it's the U.S. Army. It ain't like it's the FBI or the ATF or something. It's fucking ICE, bro. Border Patrol been around longer than they have, but this ICE it was started in 2003 to do enforcement in the interior of the United States. And I don't know that there's ever been anything really good about them. But they used to have some people that worked for them that were professional, but now they've hired so many. Who's the fucking bad ones? I mean, you would almost just have to go and screen every single fucking person you hire, look at their social media, look at their background, redo background checks. And that's another whole fucking thing. That's a whole other thing. There was a guy that was arrested in a child sex trafficking deal. And, you know, how, like Grady Judd, them, they show their pictures. This officer, I can't remember his name, he's like a sheriff or something down there, was showing pictures. And one of the guys that was arrested in a underage child sex trafficking raid was the guy that does background checks and screenings to hire HSI agents, ICE agents, and Border Patrol agents. So the guy that's fucking screening them is a fucking sex trafficking, child molester, or probably some kind of bullshit, was arrested, sitting in jail now. What the fuck, how's he going to screen anybody? So anybody he screened needs to be under scrutiny as far as I'm concerned. I mean, really. So, I don't know. I'm going to try not to rebel, but I mean, sometimes I get going, I get passionate about something, here we are. But, you know, I really think they're just abolish the motherfuckers. We don't really need them, you know. And if we do have them, they need to just be waiting in the wings for the police to turn over some criminal alien to them so they can deport them, and that's just it. You know, Border Patrol could probably handle it. You know, I'm sure the FBI and them could probably handle it. I mean, they're not doing anything else. They're not they're not arresting fucking pedophiles or nothing. You know, they're busy redacting fucking pedophiles' names out of the Epstein files and not doing those investigations. Maybe they could do immigration enforcement. But I mean, we have police for when someone breaks the law, and if someone breaks the law, they go to jail. That's it. And if they're here illegally, they can deport them. That's fine. I'm cool with that if you break the law. If you snuck in here undetected, and you didn't try to go through some sort of process, like ask for asylum, turn yourself in, do something, yeah, we probably don't need you here. We probably need you out here. You probably need to face some music, you know. Maybe that needs to be a criminal penalty. And it actually is, but under the law it says if you've come into the country undetected and haven't announced your presence within 1 year. Come on, man. Within 1 year, that's pretty broad. And that law is that broad that, like, I can sneak across the border and be in the country and come up on the 364th day and go, hey, I'm here. And there's nothing they can really do to me because I announced my presence before the year was up. So, I mean, that's the law. That's what's wrote in the law if you go look at it. Now, I mean, they can deport me, but, I mean, they're probably not going to file any kind of criminal charges against me because they just don't do that. It's usually just a civil infraction. But, you know, immigration law is a kind of a funny thing, you know, and it's pretty in-depth and it's pretty intricate. All law is, you know. It was wrote in a way where you just about got to go to school and learn how to understand it, read it, you know, and interpret it. And then the truth about it is the interpretation's only as good as whoever's interpreting it. Because you can take 14 different judges from 14 different parts of the country and they'll interpret the same law 14 different ways. So, you know, that's where we're at. But the truth about it is, if you really look at it, it is what it is. And if a person is here and they were granted permission to be here, then they're not here illegally. Because they were granted permission to be here. Maybe it's a temporary permission, but as long as they're going to court, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they haven't broke the law and had that permission revoked, they're here legally. They're here legally. And most of them have work permits, they're working, they have a temporary Social Security number or some number that they can pay taxes into, and they're not entitled to any of that back, no Social Security or nothing. Immigrants pay in billions of dollars into entitlement programs like Social Security and like state and federal and local taxes, and they spend money in the economy too, and they work and they make money. And I don't know, I mean, if I pull up to Home Depot and there's some guys wanting some work and I'm going to build a shed and I want them to work, I have to pay them. Everybody says, well, they'll just work so cheap. I can't say that's true. You're not going to get anybody to come work for you for $5 an hour. Them guys will be like, oh shit, no, fucking nada. No, nada, nooka, motherfucker. That's what you're going to hear. You're out of your mind, dude. Let's you get the fuck out of there. They're not stupid. They want $15, $20, $25 an hour, man. They want the going rate, you know. And there's a lot of people that will hire them and they'll work hard. They've got work permits and they'll work. They're not here illegally. And they have paperwork to work. There are some that work under the table. It happens. There's some farm workers and stuff that are undocumented. They sneak across the border and they work and then they go back home when the planting season's over. Some of them have documentation that allows them to come and be here and work. So they've got documentation. They're allowed to be here and work during the planting season, and they're being chased around the fields while they're trying to pick shit by a bunch of fucking Gestapo, Nazi, racist thugs. So that's the real truth about it. So when people are just on there making their fucking comments about, oh, go back where you come from, well, you're not here legally, maybe they need to shut the fuck up because they don't know what they're talking about. That's all I'm trying to say. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. I wanted to share that with everybody. I don't know if people like what I got to say or not, but I just kind of throw it out there and you can listen or you don't have to. But if you like what I got to say, like and subscribe, and I've got, you know, I'm going to try to keep the videos coming, and we can build this little channel here together. I work, so it's not to be about money, but it's just about getting out some, you know, having a conversation. And I like to hear people's comments, and I like to hear what people have to say. And I mean, good opinions, bad opinions, I guess I'll read them all and acknowledge them, you know. So, I mean, if you want to make a comment or whatever, if you disagree with me or you agree with me, or you can add a little of your own insight to it, I'm cool with that. I'm always down to learn new things if you got something insightful to say. But anyway, I just finally made it home. I've been on a long drive, a long journey, so I'm going to ease on into the house here and call it a night. But like I say, like and subscribe, and I've got some other videos, you can go watch and check them out, and hopefully I'll get this channel built up pretty soon where I get out to see, get out to a lot more people, and don't know if I can do some good with it or help some people or educate people a little bit on things they don't know or understand, or help people change their hearts or be better people, or affirm what other people already believe because they believe kind of the same way as me. And if I'm wrong, set me right, make a comment. But anyway, I'm gonna hit it, call it a night, and y'all have a good night, and God bless y'all, and I appreciate you taking a look, listening to what I have to say.